Hello. So this is chapter 4, protecting an organization. This is the Cisco Security Awareness class that we're offering here at Hocking College on autumn 2019 semester. So I come across these videos from HP. Now it is a commercial for HP printers, but they're entertaining, and we've been showing this in class just to kind of introduce some of the concepts that we'll be focusing on for that week. So this one is called the fixer.
If there's one thing I know, it's how to spot a weakness. Like this thing here, an unprotected large format printer. Without enough security protections built in, it was more vulnerable than a baby lamb. Just ask the wolf. Not only did he use it to sneak onto the network of one of the world's largest shipping companies, but for weeks he used it as a hiding spot, clawing his way deeper and deeper into the guts of the place until he was finally ready to pounce. If only it had been an HP design jet. These things can detect threats and stop them. They can also alert IT if they sense something fishy going on. All of which would have stopped Mr. Wolf in his tracks. So, what is the moral of the story? You eliminate your weakness before someone eliminates you.
Okay, so like I said earlier, that is a commercial for a Hewlett Packard, and I messed up here. What did I do? Okay, that is a commercial for Hewlett Packard printers, and yeah, so they were talking about the old equipment that they have and the vulnerabilities that they have because updates haven't been done, and there's just a lot more vulnerabilities, and it doesn't have the capabilities of some of the newer devices to alert IT of anything that a suspicious activity. So this chapter is going to cover firewalls and behavior approach to cybersecurity. Firewalls will explain the techniques to provide organizations from cyber attacks. And for the behavior part of it, we're going to explain the behavior-based approach to cybersecurity. And we're also going to be explaining the Cisco approach for providing cybersecurity. So firewalls. Firewalls can control or filter incoming or outgoing communications on a network or device. You can see there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different types of firewalls here. They all have their own capabilities. For example, the network layer firewall, it can manage the filtering and the control of incoming and outgoing IP addresses. So if you work at a facility, if you're at a facility where there's a higher need for security protocols, an example being a hospital, is then they might block some access from particular websites. Like for example, Facebook may not be allowed in there. And some of these blocks may not be for security reasons, but just for, that the organization doesn't want you on Facebook. They want to make sure you're being productive. So the blocks can be for security reasons or for productivity reasons. So then there's also the transport layer firewall. Source and destination data ports and connection states are filtered or controlled. They have the application layer firewall. So it controls the application, program, or service that you're trying to access. You have the context-aware application firewall, which manages the user, device, role, application type, and threat profile. You have a proxy server, web content, which is the web content request. You have a reverse proxy server to protect, hide, and offload and distribute access to web servers. You have the NAT firewall, which hides or masquerades the private addresses of the network system or network host. And you have a host-based firewall. It's filtering of ports and system service calls on a single computer operating system. So here is kind of like give you a visual of what the firewall is intended to be. So you have a computer trying to, and you might be doing a request. You might be trying to go on something like Facebook, I mentioned earlier. And then, whenever the request tries to get back to your computer, if you're an organization that doesn't allow access to Facebook, there's a wall. So you're not able to access it. It blocks you. And then if, somebody's trying to send you something a little bit more, a malicious intent or suspicious activity, it's blocked as well. So the firewall, it blocks both incoming and outgoing. Let's see. Okay. So source and destination IP addresses, and IPs. It's necessary to have a good understanding of what exactly an IP address is. The best way that I can explain this, like a unique identifier, such as your social security number. So your social security number is a unique identifier. The IP address is very, very similar in concept. Here's a video that kind of explains it.
If you're watching this video, you have an IP address. But what is an IP address, and how does it affect your privacy? An IP address is a number, and they usually look like this. 4 smaller numbers representing 4 bytes of information, or 32 bits. Devices need IP addresses to communicate with each other over a network, just like people need physical addresses to mail each other letters. On your home Wi-Fi network, for example, each device has a private IP address. This number is only unique within the private network. Routers tend to reuse the same numbers, so these numbers aren't globally unique. On the wider internet, however, each device has a public IP address, and that number is unique. Because it is unique to the whole internet, your public IP address is a very powerful tool for companies to gather information about you. For instance, websites can use your IP address to reveal your geographical location, sometimes down to the neighborhood. Marketers can also use your IP address to track your activity across the internet. They can see what you're interested in, what you're spending money on, and even make accurate predictions about what you'll do in the future. Even worse, these companies can take the information tied to your IP address and sell it to other third parties, all without your consent. Needless to say, many people choose to hide their IP address to protect their privacy by connecting to the internet through a VPN service like ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN reroutes your traffic through a secure server with a different IP address in a location you choose. Instead of your true IP address, websites and other third parties will see the IP address of the VPN server. That server is shared by thousands of other users, and it keeps no logs of any browsing activity. You can check what IP address you're using by visiting ExpressVPN's IP address checker at www.expressvpn.com/whatismyip, or just Google ExpressVPN IP checker.
Okay. So that kind of gives you an idea of what an IP address is, with the visual cartoons and all that cool stuff. So I found some articles that I thought was kind of interesting and tied into with the subject that we're talking about today. I got rid of this. Okay. Okay. Excuse me. So the FBI warns about attackers targeting Internet of Things devices. So I mentioned hospitals earlier. Hospitals, they need to keep their network very secure. They have private information, regarding patients' medical records, and any kind of prescriptions, anything else related to the patient. And they are kept under very, very high standards. By HIPAA is one of the organizations that helps ensures that they maintain those standards. Okay, so healthcare organizations are increasingly deploying Internet of Things devices to improve employee productivity and patient care. However, those same devices are being targeted by cyber criminals. So let's go over this article. So it talks about healthcare organizations such as hospitals and clinics using IoT to improve employee productivity. It can be an IoT, just to as a reminder, is basically any device that's somehow connected to a network. The things that's coming to my mind is like a refrigerator, where it tells you when you're out of milk, for example. There's your Fitbits. There's all kinds of things that you can do. Let's see. These cyber criminals are trafficking for and compromising IoT devices to use as proxies for internet requests to route traffic for cyber attacks. IoT devices are being targeted, including connected medical devices, routers, wireless radio links, time clocks, streaming devices, IP cameras, smart garage door openers, and network-attached storage devices. IoT proxy servers are attractive to malicious cyber actors because they provide a layer of anonymity by transmitting all internet requests through the victim's device's IP address. Cyber actors use the compromised device's IP address to engage in intrusion activities. Cybercriminal use compromised IoT devices to send spam emails, maintain anonymity, obfuscate network traffic, mask internet browsing, generate click fraud activities, buy, sell. So basically, they did a lot of bad stuff. Okay. So some of the things that attackers look for in vulnerability IoT devices include weak authentication, unmatched firmware, or other software vulnerabilities, and or default usernames and passwords. Organizations should look for indicators of compromised devices, such as a major spike in internet use and charges, devices or internet connections running slow, and unusual outgoing traffic. So it gives you some suggestions on to prevent your IoT devices from being compromised. The U.S. Computer Emergency Readiness Team issued a similar warning about IoT devices last fall. It says they warn organizations that many connected devices can be infected at one time with unauthorized users accessing the information on those devices. So they recommended that organizations take steps to secure their IoT devices, including evaluating security settings, ensuring software is up to date, taking precautions when connecting devices, and using strong passwords. Says this technology provides a level of convenience to our lives, but it requires that we share more information than ever. And I think that is, a very, very accurate statement. I mean, we use this tech. I mean, this tech wasn't always around, and we made do before this tech came around. But our culture is like, is very. We want to be able to do more and do it faster and do it better and reduce the number of steps and all that stuff. And that's why we love the technology that we have in our hands. But it does come at a cost in regards to the fact that we are putting ourselves in a more vulnerable state. So that's something that you need to take in consideration whenever, we have all these cool gadgets and stuff that we can do. But there is a cost to it. And are you comfortable paying that cost? I did a school visit yesterday, and it was talking about Alexa and voice user interface and the concerns that some people have in regards to Alexa being in their home because, it's spying on them and whatever, listening to their conversations. And as I told the students yesterday, I was like, if they want to listen to me, that's fine, right? But nothing that interesting going on in my house. Now, having said that, this was, I think, 15 years ago. Can't remember now. My ex-husband was in the Army, and we lived in military housing. And he was very cautious about what we said, especially if it was anything regarding the President of the United States. And I thought he was being overly, paranoid, but maybe not. So it's possible because we were in military housing, they could have had something done just to spy. I don't know why they would want to, but well, I guess I do know why they would want to, if something was really bad going on, but nothing bad was going on our house. Anyway, so there's, that technology does exist. and you just gotta, makes our lives more convenient, but it does come at a price. Enabling certain features to increase convenience or functionality may leave you more vulnerable to being attacked. It's important to examine the settings, particularly security settings, and select options to meet your needs. Since the global healthcare IoT and security market is expected to grow, factors fueling that growth include increasing connectivity of healthcare IoT devices with caregivers and new access points for hackers to exploit. Therefore, implementation of security solutions will become increasingly important for organizations. So key players in the market include Cisco. And let's see, which is, where we get our curriculum from for this course. Says North America is a leading region in IoT security implementation in the healthcare sector. So, okay, so that's, I thought was some really relevant information. The healthcare industry being as big as it is, and even if you don't work exactly with the healthcare industry, if you're somehow a vendor for something in healthcare, you need to be aware of the fact that any kind of IoT devices that you have on you could be a potential entrance point for something within the healthcare industry. Okay, let's see. So port scanning. So port scanning is a process of probing a computer, server, or other network host for open ports. Port numbers are assigned to each running application on a device. Reconnaissance tool is used to identify running operating systems and services. The Nmap is a port scanning tool. Common responses are if they're open or accepted, which basically means it's listening. If it's closed, denied, or not listening, means that the connections will be denied to that port, and it's filtered, dropped, or blocked. No reply from the host. Okay, so here's the video talk about a little bit about what ports are.
All peripherals need a way to connect to a computer, so let's take a look at the different types of ports and connectors. First is the most common of all, USB. USB stands for Universal Serial Bus, and it's a type of connector found not only on computer peripherals, but on gaming consoles, TVs, DVDs, and Blu-ray players, car audio systems. USB is nearly everywhere. When you see a port that looks like this on the back of a computer, regardless of the color, that's a USB port. It's worth mentioning that the USB port on the device that you want to connect to might look different from this. There are actually a number of different types of USB connectors. Here's a quick look at some of them. One of the bummers about all of these USB connectors is that if you try to plug them in upside down, they won't work. This is why the newest version of USB, called USB-C, is a very welcome change. It's reversible, so it doesn't matter which way you plug it in. Another significant port on the back of a computer is the Ethernet port. The Ethernet port allows you to plug in an Ethernet cable, which can connect your computer to a network and to the internet. Now, to connect your computer to a monitor, there are several possibilities. For many years, the 15-pin VGA port was the standard, and you'll still sometimes see it in use today on old computers and projectors. This type of connector, however, is limited in terms of the screen resolution and the quality that it can support, which is something we'll talk more about later. But for this reason, it's generally not found on new products anymore. Next is the DVI port, which comes in a few different variations, some of which suffer from the same limitations as the VGA connector. For this reason, this type of connector is also becoming less common. By far the most common connector for connecting a display, whether it's a computer monitor or a widescreen TV, is an HDMI port. HDMI is fully digital, and it supports high-resolution displays and can also carry audio. You'll find HDMI ports on just about every new TV and computer monitor these days. HDMI cables and connectors come in a few different sizes in order to accommodate different sized devices. The final video connector we'll look at is called DisplayPort. DisplayPort isn't as common as HDMI, but hopefully it will be, because it's actually better in a couple of ways, supporting even higher resolutions and frame rates. DisplayPort comes in two sizes, and if you're a Mac user, you'll probably recognize the smaller of the two. called mini DisplayPort. Speaking of Macs, it's worth noting that the mini DisplayPort on newer Macs is also a Thunderbolt port, which is indicated by the little lightning bolt symbol. Thunderbolt is a type of connection created by Apple that is very high speed and allows you to connect many devices to just one port. Turning to audio, we've got our standard 3.5mm headphone jack and a 3.5mm audio input jack. It's worth noting that many audio devices are equipped with USB connectors, so these two aren't always necessary. Some computers, like this one, also have an integrated SD card reader, which can make it easier to copy photos from a digital camera to your computer. Some devices can be connected to your computer without having to use any sort of cable at all. The most common way to connect devices wirelessly to your computer is to use Bluetooth. A Bluetooth device uses radio waves instead of wires or cables, and there are many devices that support Bluetooth, including cell phones, headsets, keyboards, mice, portable speakers, car audio systems, and more. Bluetooth typically has a range of about 30 feet, so your devices have to be somewhat close together in order to stay connected. Finally, there's the wireless connection that you're probably already familiar with, Wi-Fi. You can think of Wi-Fi like a wireless version of an Ethernet cable. Its primary purpose is to connect computers and some other devices like phones and tablets to networks and to the internet. Unlike Bluetooth, which allows devices to connect directly to one another, Wi-Fi uses a wireless router that all of the different devices then connect to in order to communicate with one another. This results in greater wireless range, especially if you have more than one router, and much faster data transfer speeds. But it's all dependent on having the wireless router. For this reason, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth serve very different purposes. Wi-Fi is used to connect devices to networks and to the internet, and Bluetooth is used to connect devices directly to a variety of peripherals. This concludes our discussion of ports and connections. I hope you've enjoyed this video and that you have a better idea of the different ways that devices can connect to one another.
Okay. So you can see there's different kinds of ports. I'm sure most of them you're familiar with. There's some that are kind of dated that you probably don't see too much unless you're on an older device or older computer. So for the security appliances that we use, so there's routers, there's firewalls, there's IPS, VPN, malware, antivirus, and other security devices. Routers, they can have many firewall capabilities already built in, such as traffic filtering, IPS encryption, and VPN. Firewalls may also have a router capability, advanced network management and analytics. IPS is dedicated to intrusion prevention, which, shoot, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay. Intrusion prevention system, or security. I don't remember what that S stands for. But it's basically intended to prevent intrusion. Virtual private network is VPN, is designed for secure encrypted tunneling. Malware and antivirus. So Cisco has their advanced malware protection. AMP comes in their next generation Cisco routers, firewalls, IPS devices, web, and email security appliances. And they can also be installed as software and host computers. So let me go ahead and finish this last one. Okay, other security devices include web and email security appliances, decryption devices, client access control servers, and security management systems. So that video with the wolf with Christian Slater and whoever the other guy is, they're talking, it's like I said, it's a commercial for HP. It talks about, getting their newer printers because they have so many more security capabilities built in, can contact the network people to let them know if suspicious activities happening. So Cisco, has similar equipment. They have the same concept, the same kind of equipment. Things are updated on a semi-regular basis. I don't know exactly how often they put new stuff out. But they have something in next generation. So for example, the next generation Cisco equipment, they have AMP built into it. So those are the things to take into consideration whenever you just need to update your equipment, or if you can just update any kind of software or firmware that's in the equipment. Those are the decisions that you need to make, and just make one that's, cost. You got to keep cost in consideration, but you also don't want to put yourself in a vulnerable spot, especially if you're in a high security facilities, again, like hospitals. So ZeroDay Attack is a hacker can exploit a flaw in a piece of software before the creator can fix it. So we all see updates on our phones or on our computers. I still need to do my last iOS update, but that's usually intended to kind of patch any kind of flaws or patch any kind of vulnerabilities that we have. Sometimes it's just because it's a big muck up whenever the last update, and it's like, oh crap, we need to fix that, and that's the fix. And sometimes it's just regular updates as they see that the vulnerabilities are creeping in, like the bad guys are able to figure out new ways to get in, and they have to patch this up. So real-time scanning from edge to endpoint is actively scanning for attacks using a firewall and IDS, IPS network device. Detection with connections to online global threat centers and detect network anomalies using context-based analysis and behavior detection. So DDoS attack, distributed denial of service attacks and real-time response. DDoS is one of the biggest attack threats, can cripple internet servers with network availability. DDoS originates from hundreds or thousands of zombie hosts, and the attacks appear as legitimate traffic. So last week I talked about Ticketmaster. Years ago, whenever I was trying to buy tickets for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I couldn't get on. It was bogged down. It was slow. It froze. It was just a mess. And whenever I checked the next day to try to find those tickets, Ticketmaster was sold out. You could buy them online from other people, but they were like triple the amount. And so it was frustrating as someone who just legitimately just wanted to buy a couple of tickets, for them to go see a show, when these people are hacking into the system by using bots and buying up all the tickets in one round and charging triple for them. It's frustrating. And I think the music industry and anybody else that kind of sells tickets were really aware of that, and they were trying to go through measures to keep that from happening. But it's very difficult to control something of that nature. So, and again, it looks like what from last week we were talking about with Ticketmaster, whenever they now they're on AWS, they're hosted on AWS, so they have the scalability so that they don't have that denial of service for those who are just wanting to legitimately buy a ticket. A couple weeks ago when I purchased the Garth Brooks tickets, there's a limit of 2, so that's a measure that they're doing. It's like I can only buy 2 tickets. If I want to buy 2 more tickets, I can only buy them in increments of 2. So that's a measure that they're doing to prevent some from one person or bot or somebody to purchasing all the tickets. And then like with the scalability of utilizing AWS, that they're able to support all the traffic that they're getting for whenever tickets go on sale. So on the flip side of that, so depending on what kind of service you have with AWS and the cloud, and I'm sure other cloud providers are the same, that the more computing power you use, so the more your scalability goes up, because of higher traffic, the more it costs. And it can vary. There's different kind of packages you can purchase within the scalability and the computing power within AWS. So I'm sure they've already thought about that, but just to be aware. So if somebody was trying to, flood your system with requests, and you were able to manage all this requests with the high demand on traffic, and your scalability was going up, and your computing power is going up, that is actually costing you because you're using the increased computing power. So and I don't know I don't know off the top of my head how much going up incremental will increase the cost, but it does increase the cost. And I'm sure, it can go from a few dollars to a few $100s real quick, or a few $1,000s, depending on the kind of traffic that, is swamped in. But so even if the DDoS is not successful in preventing like other people from buying tickets, in the example of Ticketmaster, or accessing whatever it is that they're wanting to access, if it can cause the consequences of financial cost of having to pay for the increased computing power when it's just not legitimate traffic coming in. Okay, here's an article, I think. Yeah. So talks about DDoS explained, how distributed denial of service attacks are evolving. So, bad guys are getting smarter, figuring out new ways of, getting around. And, most oftentimes, the good guys are trying to play catch up to figure out to combat what the bad guys are doing. So a DDoS attack is like a distributed denial of service when an attacker or attackers attempt to make it impossible for a service to be delivered. So this can be achieved by thwarting access to virtually anything: servers, devices, services, networks, applications, and even specific transactions. Let's see. Generally, these attacks work by drowning the system with requests for data. This could be sending a web server so many requests to serve a page that it crashes under the demand. Amazon, is probably a good example for, Cyber Monday. Or it could be a database being hit with a high volume of queries. The result is available internet bandwidth, CPU, and RAM capacity becomes overwhelmed. The impact could range from a minor annoyance from distributed services is taken offline. So DDoS attacks can look like they're non-malicious because you kind of think they're just legitimate requests, but that's not the case. They're just trying to bog down the system. So, for whatever the reason, whether it is to charge 3 times the amount for tickets or just to prevent access for whatever reason. So here's in the early 2000s, somebody named Mafia Boy, they got Yahoo with a DDoS and managed to shut down one of the leading web powerhouses at the time. So for example, say somebody got into Google, like we were not able to use Google as our search engine, or, and we had to try to find Bing or something else. Let's see. So over the course of the week that followed, other sites were affected, like Amazon, CNN, and eBay. Since then, DDoS attacks have become an all too frequent menace, as they are commonly used to exact revenge, conduct extortion as a means of online activism, and even engage in cyber war. Let's see. And I think I remember this. In October 2016, the Internet Infrastructure Services provider DNS was struck by a wave of DNS inquiries from tens to millions of IP addresses. So the attack executed through a Mirai botnet, which infected reportedly over 100,000 IoT devices, including IP cameras and printers. And at their peak, it had 400,000 bots, and services included Amazon, Netflix, Reddit, Spotify, Tumblr, and Twitter. And if that's what I'm thinking it is, I was working for OU at the time, and we used everything in Box. And Box was down, and it was just kind of just sitting there because I couldn't do anything because everything that we did was in Box. So in early 2018, there was a new DDoS technique began to emerge. So it looks like they got GitHub with a massive denial of service attack with 1.3 terabytes per second of traffic hitting the popular site. It said it was only knocked offline intermittently and managed to beat the attack, but back entirely after less than 20 minutes. But the scale is definitely something to be concerned about. Let's see. Okay. So DDoS attacks today. While the volume of DDoS attacks have been declining, they are still a significant threat. Says the number of DDoS attacks decreased every quarter in 2018 over the previous year, except for the third to an anonymous, act of September. Let's see. Another alarming trend is the availability of new DDoS launch platforms. So the attack tools rely on botnets, which is a collection of network of malware infected systems that are centrally controlled. These infected endpoints are usually computers and servers, but IoT and mobile devices are also being used more. The attackers will harvest these systems by identifying vulnerable systems that they can affect through phishing attacks, malvertising attacks, and other mass infection techniques. So the types of DDoS attacks, those include massive amounts of bogus traffic to down a resource such as a website or server. Another class is using packets to target the network infrastructure and infrastructure management tools. And finally, some DDoS attacks target organizations' application layer that are conducted by flooding applications with maliciously crafted requests. The goal is the same: to make online resources sluggish or completely unresponsive. Let's see. Another trend is to use multiple attack vectors within an attack, also known as advanced persistent denial of service, APDOS. It's an attack which may involve the application layer, such as attacks against the databases and applications, as well as directly on the server. It goes beyond simply flooding. Attackers often don't just directly target their victims, but also the organizations on which they depend, such as ISPs and cloud providers. These are broad-reaching, high-impact attacks that are well coordinated. So this is changing the impact of DDoS attacks on organizations and expanding their risk. Businesses are no longer merely concerned with DDoS attacks on themselves, but also in the vast number of business partners, vendors, and suppliers. So, they talked here about cloud providers. AWS, GCP, Azure, and whichever other ones are available, they work to, have like 11 nines of availability, which is 99.999 11 nines. Okay, not 100%, but a lot of nines. But it's not 100%. There's always that slim chance that, a vulnerability can be exposed and utilized. But there's no, just like anything else in life, there's no 100% guarantees. You kind of work with the best resource you have and hope for the best and do whatever you can to prevent anything bad from happening. Says, of course, as criminals perfect their DDoS attacks, technology and taxes will not stand still. So in addition to new IoT devices, rising machine learning and AI will play a role in changing these attacks. Attackers will eventually integrate these techs into attacks as well, making it more difficult for defenders to catch up with DDoS attacks. I think I said DDoS attacks. Specifically those that cannot be stopped by simple ACLs or signature. I think ACLs, access control list, or signatures. DDoS defense technology will have to evolve in that direction as well. So it's a constant game of, one-upmanship. And that's what kind of makes the field very interesting and scary at the same time. Okay. So Cisco has their AMP threat grid benefits. Let's see. I forgot what AMP stands for. Okay, advanced malware protection. Cisco has their advanced malware protection threat grid that benefits security functions across the organization. Let's see. So they have different teams here that focus on different areas. They have a secure operations center team. They can get more accurate and actionable data. They have the incidents response team, and they use forensically sound information to understand suspicious behavior faster. They have threat intelligence, proactively improve security infrastructure, and the security infrastructure engineering team. They consume and act on threat information faster in an automated manner. So here's some security best practices. Perform a risk assessment, create a policy, physical security measures, use locks and biometrics and whatever it is that you think is best based on your needs and, your resources. Human and resource security measures, so make sure that they're properly researched with background checks. I think about background checks, and this is something that I learned, working at HCOM. The background checks are only as good as the date that they were checked. So unless you have it done on a repetitive basis, on an annual basis, for example, it could change real quick, change in a day. So perform and test backups, perform regular backups, maintain security patches and updates, employ access controls. Regularly test incident response. They implement a network monitoring, analytics, and management tool. Implement network security devices. Implement a comprehensive endpoint security solution. Educate users and encrypt data. Okay, so we're talking about bots and botnets. So let's start with bot. A bot is typically infected by visiting a website. Okay. Your computer becomes a bot when it's affected by visiting a website, opening an email or attachment, or opening an infected media file. A botnet is a group of bots connected through the internet. So your computer can become a bot, and a group of them becomes a botnet, controlled by malicious individuals or users. So in step 1, the infected clients try to communicate with the command and control host on the internet. Cisco, this is the traffic filter. Cisco Security Intelligence Operations updates the Cisco ASA and botnet filter list, and the destination is a known attack site. So alerts go out to the security teams for prevention, mitigation, and remediation. So somebody malicious attacker is trying to access your network or your computer, and there have Cisco's botnet filter helps prevent that, and notification is sent to the network people, the network security. And so there's other tools that are utilized to help keep that from happening. The kill chain in Cyberdefense. So the kill chain is the stages of information systems attack. There's reconnaissance, which is where they gather information. Weaponization, it creates a targeted exploit. Delivery sends the exploit and malicious payload to the target. Exploitation executes the exploit. Installation installs malware and backdoors. Command and control, remote control from a command and control channel or server. And then the action performs malicious actions or additional attacks on the devices. So in this chart right here, starts off with reconnaissance. It's divided into 3 categories: pre-compromise, compromise, and post-compromise. So there's reconnaissance, weaponization, and delivery. So this is before it's actually into the stage of being compromised. So it's the delivery of a phishing attack on an email, a phishing attempt email. And this is before somebody clicks on that link, So in the video we watched last week with the lady with the birthday and got the email for a free spa trip. So they did a little bit of reconnaissance. They saw that her birthday was coming up and so on. And then they did a weaponization. They created creates targeted exploit and malicious payload. So they created whatever it is that they were going to create. And then the delivery was, sending that email for that lady to click on. Okay, so the exploitation stage is whenever she clicked on that link. And the installation was everything that happened after she clicked on that link. The command and control, remote control from a command and control channel or server. So they were waiting for they were already in position of compromise. The bad guys, the attackers, already got her in a compromised position. So they were just waiting and for whatever their next step was. For whatever, I think there was a meeting or something that happened the next day. And you can see in this arrow, it says increased effort and cost to inhibit and remediate. So once, it gets to this point where the action is performed and the information is taken or whatever happens, it's very hard and it's very costly, especially with some sort of ransom attack to offset that. It's much easier and less costly to prevent something at the reconnaissance stage or even at the weaponization and delivery. Reconnaissance can be, prohibit your employees from having any kind of social media activity. I think that would be a tough one, but, if they know because of the birthday, because of that. The delivery could have some mechanisms to prevent any kind of mail coming in that does not from a trusted source. Even if it's spoofed to be a trusted source, you can teach your employees, best practices on what to open and what not to open. There's a human factor in there. Not everybody's going to be 100% perfect on maintaining those rules, especially when they see an incentive that they find attractive, such as a free spa day. Those are things that just have to take in consideration. Let's see. So behavior-based security. You have honeypots, which lures the attacker by appealing to the attacker's predictable behavior. He captures logs and analyzes the attacker's behavior. So they lure it in, and then they capture the attacker's behavior. And the administrator can gain more knowledge and build better defense. The bad guys keep getting smarter and they find new ways, and the good guys in the admin team, they need to find out a better way to know what they're doing and how to build a defense. You can't defend something if you don't know what's happening or what it is. Cisco Cyber Threat Defense Solution Architecture uses behavior-based detection and indicators and provides greater visibility, context, and control. Netflow is gathering information about data flowing through a network. It's important components in a behavior-based detection and analysis, and establishes a baseline behavior. So basically what it says right here, they gather information about data flowing. So you have traffic, and it captures it, inspects the packets, such as the IP addresses, like where it's from and where it's going to, the ports, and some of these other information as well. So this is how Cisco does security. They have a computer security incident response team. They help ensure company system and data preservations by performing comprehensive investigations into computer security incidents. They provide proactive threat assessment, mitigation planning, and incident trend analysis and security architecture review. They have a security playbook, which is a collection of repeatable queries against security event data sources that lead to incident detection and response. So they say the best defense is a good offense. So they are building their offensive plan to prevent anything from happening, malicious wise. What does it need to accomplish? It needs to detect malware, infected machines, detect suspicious network activity, detect irregular authentication attempts, describe and understand inbound and outbound traffic, provide summary information including trends, provide usable and quick access to stats and metrics, and correlate events across all relevant data sources. Tools for incident prevention and detection. They have the security information and event management, which is software that collects and analyzes security alerts, logs, and other real-time and historical data from security devices on the network. They have the data loss prevention, which stops sensitive information from being stolen or escape from the network. It's designed to monitor and protect data in 3 different states. You have a Cisco Identity Services Engine and TrustSec. It uses role-based access control policies. And I found this little blog here. I thought it was interesting.
No, you might might graduate now. Other than that, I mean, which is totally up to you. Yeah, that would be what you do. Okay.
Role-based access control restricts network access based on a person's role within an organization. So I've been talking about in class the difference between the raw access that I have as an instructor here at Hocking College versus somebody who works in HR. Like I don't have access to payroll. Let's see. And benefits of role-based access control is managing and auditing network access is essential to information security. Access can and should be granted on a need-to-know basis. With hundreds of thousands of employees, security is more easily maintained by limiting unnecessary access to sensitive info. Let's see. Okay, best practices. Implementing a role-based access control into your organization shouldn't happen without a great deal of consideration. So there's a series of broad steps to bring the team on board without causing unnecessary confusion and possible workplace irritations. So their current status. Create a list of every software, hardware, and app that has some sort of security. For most of these things, it will be a password. However, you may want that list to include server rooms that are under lock and key. Physical security can be a vital part of data protection. Also list the status of who has access to all these programs and areas. Current roles, even if you do not have a formal roster and list of roles, determining what each individual team member does may only take a little discussion. Try to organize the team in such a way that doesn't stifle creativity in the current culture. Write a policy. Any changes may need to be written for all current and future employees to see. Even with the use of RBAC tool, a document clearly articulating your new system will help avoid potential issues. Make changes once the current security status and roles are understood. It's time to make the changes and continue to adapt. It's likely that the first iteration will require some tweaking. You should evaluate your roles and security status frequently. Assess first how well the creative production process is working, and secondly, how secure your process happens to be. So the frustrations that sometimes comes with RBAC is the fact that you might need access to something and maybe a one-off thing. But because of your role within an organization, you're not able to access it. It's a whole ordeal to try to get what you need to do. And that creates a frustration. But the policy is there for a reason. So it's kind of, pick your evil, pick the lesser evil. Okay. Okay. IDS and IPS. IDS is an intrusion detection system. It's usually placed offline and does not prevent attacks. It can detect, log, and report. The intrusion prevention system, which is the IPS, is the ability to block or deny traffic based on a positive rule of signature match. And there's some examples of IDS, IPS systems. Okay. So that's all on that. And I'll go ahead and put this in Slack. And then we'll also be talking about this in class today.
Yes, that one is called a still. Okay.